All right, everybody. How's it going? Chuck Holton here. Hopefully you can hear me. I can hear me. And what we're seeing here is we're watching, I think this is the Soroka Hospital in Beersheba, where living hostages are being brought to the hospital after having been released by Hamas. I welcome all of you today. And like I say, I hope you can all hear me and everything. We're watching this live feed from Reuters, and we're just, there's not a lot happening right this minute. So we're gonna, let me get rid of that, and we'll talk about that some more in a little bit. So thank you for being here. I've got a whole lot to go through. Obviously, a lot has happened since last night's live. And so I want to just get to it really quickly. Hamas released all 20 living Israeli hostages starting about 8 a.m. local time this morning. The last hostage left the Gaza Strip as of 10:28 a.m. Local time. And so all 20 living hostages have been released. This is a momentous day for the Gaza peace deal that was brokered by the Trump administration. And we're going to talk about whether or not this is the end of the war, what else we should see in the days ahead. And we're going to celebrate with the people of Israel, who pretty much all of them right now are looking like this. So obviously the whole country is cheering right now, very excited to see their loved ones coming home that they've been waiting for and praying for a long time. And I always have to say, look, if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. I said it was very unlikely that they would get the rest of these living hostages back alive, barring some kind of negotiated settlement. And what we saw here was a negotiated settlement. I am so glad that I was wrong about that. I don't think the likelihood was any different. I think I was correct in saying that the likelihood was small, but the fact that President Trump helped Israel beat the odds on this one, and we are all very grateful to see that happen. I mean, that's just amazing. That's just so awesome. So today's episode is brought to you by the wellness company. And I wanted to just show you a quick video about. You know what's worse than getting the flu? Sitting in an ER 6 hours behind somebody who's actively losing a lung just to be told it's viral, go home and rest. Yeah, no thanks. That's why there's the Contagion Emergency Kit. I love this thing from the Wellness Company. It's your own personal urgent care in a box. So here's the deal. If you wake up with a sore throat and sound like Chewbacca, you might have a fever. You don't know. You don't wait for permission to get better. You go open your kit. It's got ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, generic Tamiflu, a Z-Pack, and a whole lot more, all prescribed by a real doctor, plus a guide that tells you exactly how to use it without killing yourself. So no waiting rooms, no insurance, no games, and no government guidelines, just medicine that works when you need it. It's peace of mind, or as I like to call it, common sense in a box. So go to twc.health/hotzone and use code HOTZONE to save $32. That's twc.health/hotzone. Code HOTZONE before flu season turns you into. So that was me out right next to our Airbnb here. We're in Maine today. I'm up here visiting with some of my grandkids, and we're having a great time. And that's why I've got to get through all of this, because we got a boat ride to take later on today. So I realize the connection is spotty. It's not a whole lot I can do about that, unfortunately, but we'll continue to do the best we can. Maybe I can actually use my cell service. It might be better. Let's see if I can change the connection to my phone, and might have. Okay, I think we're back. I just changed to my to alternate internet service, so hopefully that will make the quality a little bit better of the connection. Now, again, just to reiterate, all of the living hostages, all 20 of them, have been returned by Hamas from Gaza to Israel, and they are making their way to the hospitals as we speak. They have, many of them have already been reunited with their families. There's an amazing one here of Elkanah Bobot, who was a hostage, again, been held for more than 700 days as he meets his wife for the first time in 2 years. Check this out.
חיים שלי, אתה אלוף גיבור, כפרה עליך אני, כמה החיות שלך מחכות לראות אותך, ואילנה, חיים שלי ונוני, כל העולם, חיים שלי, בטח, החזירו לי אותו אחרי 4 ימים, אתה לא מבין, טונטון, אתה לא מבין, חיים שלי, מה? כפרה עליך אני, זה החיים שלי, אתה רוצה לשתות, כפרה עליך.
So, I mean, is that awesome? That's just so great to see. I tell you what, it's just warms my heart to see people reunited with their loved ones like that. Now, in addition to the 20 living hostages, Hamas was supposed to release all of the deceased hostages as well. There were 28 of them left, and only 4 of them have been turned over to the IDF. So Hamas has, I don't know if you'd say reneged on that, that promise as part of the deal, was to give back the bodies of the deceased hostages, but they're having a hard time finding them, they say. And as Vice President Vance said yesterday in a speech, it is not unlikely that we won't get all of the deceased hostages back because they just don't know where they all are. But the release was a key demand in the 21-point deal that President Trump put together to end this war. Now, they had to release all the live hostages by Monday at noon, and they made it with just about an hour and a half to spare. The first group of 7 hostages was released, as I said, right before 8 a.m. local time. I'm sorry, right after 8 a.m. local time. And they were transferred to the Red Cross, which then delivered them to the Israeli forces inside Gaza. I think I have some footage of the handover. So let's turn the volume off on that. This is Israeli footage of the hostages as they are leaving Gaza. This is the first group of 7 hostages. You see they had quite a bit of security there as well, that they were escorting them out of the war zone. And as they got closer, got to where the people were, it was more like a parade. Again, I'll turn the audio off because it's not relevant. It's got music in it. But you can see here there were Israelis lining the streets as they watched this procession go by. Everybody was so excited. This is just great to see. So pretty awesome. Now, I see Myra here says no prisoners should be returned before all the hostages, dead or alive, have been returned. That was kind of the deal, but I think that Israel is going above and beyond here, and that they upheld their part of this deal, which was to release about 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. They released all of the Palestinian prisoners who were in Israeli jail for life sentences, except for about 24. There's only, I think, a little less than 24 prisoners left who are serving life sentences. Now they refused. Here, this is the Palestinian prisoners being released. We'll turn that down. This is in Ramallah, in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria area. And these terrorists are being released. These are people who murdered Israelis in terror attacks. Now, Israel did not release any of the terrorists who took part in October 7th. They refused to do that. And they also refused to release some of the most high-profile terrorists that Hamas wanted to have released. And Israel just said, no, we're not going to do that. So the Israeli hostages that were released were first taken to a military base outside the Gaza Strip. They were reunited with their families there. And then from there, they were flown to hospitals in around Israel, mostly the Soroka Hospital in Beersheba. Large crowd there waiting to cheer. Everywhere these people go, they're going to be feted as heroes. The Israeli government announced that they're going to pay each one of these hostages about $16,000 right now. I think they said 60,000 Israeli shekels. I think that's about $16,000 bucks. And 9,000 shekels a month for the rest of their lives. I don't know if that includes any back pay because all of these living hostages were IDF members, and so I'm not sure if they're also going to get back pay or if that includes their back pay. But they're going to get 9,000 shekels, which is about what, I don't know, $1,300, $1,400 a month for life, because of the time that they spent in captivity. Somebody has a question here. Lord Peanut, Trump gave the green light to Hamas to kill their opposition. Doesn't that mean that Hamas will rule Gaza again? Isn't that just another October 7th? That's a very good question. And I don't know that Trump gave them the green light to kill their opposition, but as the Israelis have pulled out of the areas that were once under their control and people are moving back in there, Hamas has mobilized about 7,000 troops and spread them across Gaza to try to reassert their control and governance over those areas. Now, Israel still controls more than 50% of Gaza and will continue to do that until Hamas decides to disarm. But now the new thing you're seeing is that Hamas is just changing their name. They're saying, yeah, we're not Hamas anymore. We're now the Gaza Security Service. And so it's still the same people. I don't know how you get around that. I'm not sure how you move beyond that and ensure that all of those people are disarmed. Hamas has been saying since day one, we're not going to disarm. They've all throughout this peace process, they've been saying we're not going to disarm. That is a non-starter for us. We will not give up our weapons, and we will not stop the struggle of resistance against the Israeli state. Again, they don't want a Palestinian state in Gaza. They want a Palestinian state in what was Israel with all of the Jews gone. And that's the only thing that they're saying they will accept. So obviously that's going to be kind of a non-starter for Israel. And so we'll see what happens coming up next. Now, let me just make sure my audio is correct. I did it again. Okay, that might make 30 seconds. Just a second. Every time I put these headphones in, it tries to change the microphone and use the microphone on these things, which is not very good. And I've got a better microphone here that is supposed to be much better, but for some reason this thing just likes to automatically change it. Okay, so shortly after the Israeli hostages were released, President Trump arrived in Israel, and he went directly to the Knesset and spoke to the Knesset. I'm going to play you a couple of excerpts from his speech. One of the things he said was that the jihad that we've seen all across the Middle East for many decades has completely backfired, which is, this is sort of, I would say, Captain Obvious territory, but it's nice to hear
to everyone throughout the region that decades of fomenting terrorism and extremism, jihadism and anti-Semitism have not worked. They haven't worked. They've been a disaster. They've just killed. They've killed. They've backfired completely and totally. They've just totally backfired. Everything that you thought, take it, worst case, it's turned out to be worse than that. They have not worked. From Gaza to Iran, those bitter hatreds have delivered nothing but misery, suffering, failure, and death. They've served not to weaken Israel, but to annihilate the very forces that did the most to foment this hatred. And it's really, I mean, everybody that's tried it has become irrelevant. Meanwhile, we've seen those nations that set aside their differences, reached across ancient divides, and pursued engagement are now among the most.
Yep, absolutely. He's pushing for an addition to the Abraham Accords. And now what President Trump is doing now, he's just left to go to Egypt. We had live feed to that, but that's gone away. There's still, this is the live feed that shows the vehicles that brought the remaining living hostages to the airport. There were two sets of hostages, those that were in critical condition that were flown to the hospital, and those that were not critical condition that were driven to the hospital. So I don't know what to tell you about if the audio is bad. I'm sorry about that. And we'll have to see what we can do to try to make that better. But how about we turn that echo cancellation on? Maybe that'll help. There's not a lot of settings on my end for fixing the audio. It's just bandwidth issues, I believe. Again, President Trump spoke to the Knesset, and here's the beginning of his speech, which I thought was very good. Take a listen.
A new Middle East. I want to express my gratitude to a man of exceptional courage and patriotism, whose partnership did so much to make this momentous day possible. You know who I'm talking about. There's only one. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Baby, please stand up.
So, President Trump recognizing Benjamin Netanyahu, he also called for President Trump called for the opposition, or I guess the president of, not the opposition, the president of Israel, to pardon Benjamin Netanyahu for whatever crimes he's being accused of, and saying, look what he's done in this war. He's a great guy. Doesn't he deserve to be pardoned? That's interesting. There, obviously, there's a lot of dissension and division in the Israeli community, in the Israeli nation, just like there is in the United States. A lot of division between left and right. There are people in the Knesset that are hard left, communists. And as a matter of fact, 2 of them were kicked out of President Trump's speech for holding signs that said, recognize Palestine. So you've actually got at least two politicians, elected officials in Israel who are calling for the state of Palestine to be recognized, to recognize a terrorist state on the edges of the Israeli state. And I mean, that's insane. I mean, that's just crazy. So it's obviously a absolutely terrible thing that President Trump, that they call that the 9th war that Israel is fighting. That's the war that is fighting within itself, against itself. And anyway, it was a good speech. President Trump he got there late, and then he went very, very long, which is his kind of modus operandi. He does that everywhere. President Trump really likes to talk. If only he was better at doing it, it would be great. But so again, everybody's very grateful to President Trump for what he has done, and he invited Benjamin Netanyahu to accompany him to Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt for the peace conference to try to hash out the rest of the details in this 21-point peace plan. And initially, it was reported that Netanyahu was going to go. But that caused a real backlash. We saw President Erdogan of Turkey say, if Netanyahu is there, I'm not even going to land. I won't even come. The Prime Minister of Iraq said he would not go if Netanyahu was there. Netanyahu gracefully bowed out and said, well, we have the Simchat Torah holiday that's beginning tonight, and so we're not going to, I'm not going to go because we're going to be celebrating. I did a little more, I'm not a scholar of, the Jewish religion or anything. I spent a lot of time in Israel, so I probably know more than your average bear about Israelis and about the Jewish traditions, but I didn't know a whole lot about Simchat Torah. It turns out it is not a solemn holiday. Simchat Torah is where they celebrate the end of the reading of the Torah, which they go through every year, and the beginning anew in Genesis. Like, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So it's like a big party, just celebrating that continuity, that tradition, and the fact that God had given His word to man in order for us to know the truth. And so it's like 2 days of partying, and they're gonna have an extra big party all across Israel this time, obviously, because these hostages have been released back home. Now, one other video I want to show you from the speeches that were given in the Knesset. Yair Lapid, who's an opposition leader in the Knesset, gave a speech that I thought was important enough to play an excerpt of here as he talks directly to the protesters who have been protesting for Gaza all this time. Take a listen.
From here I say to all those who demonstrated against Israel these past 2 years, on the streets of London and Rome, in Paris and in Columbia University. I do not represent the government. As you know, I am the leader of the opposition. And I tell you, then, you were deceived. You were deceived. Propaganda experts, funded by terror money, manipulated you. Now that the war has stopped, you have time and a chance to go and learn the facts. The truth is, there was no genocide, no intentional starvation.
He's speaking directly to the protesters there. How do I remove that guy? There he is. He's speaking directly to the protesters and saying, it bears repeating. Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, all of these useful idiots across college campuses, across America and across Europe and everywhere else. The president or prime minister of Spain, all these people who were calling for a Palestinian state. They've been shown to be a fraud. They've been shown that everything they did nothing but extend this war and cause a whole lot more Palestinians to die, as well as Israeli soldiers. If everyone had brought as much pressure as possible to bear on Hamas from day one to release those hostages, this war would have been over a long time ago. Folks, we got more than 2,000 people watching the show here. Please do me a favor and go over to chuckholton.com. The link is in the little ticker down there at the bottom. chuckholton.com, we have a lot of extra content that we're putting up that you can go see. You get early access to a lot of the content that we make that eventually goes up on YouTube, but you get to see it first over at Locals. And that's a great way for us to sort of future-proof the podcast by getting more people to sign up over there. We've got more than 20,000 people who are subscribers over there. And you can also become a supporter for $9 a month and actually help support what we're doing to keep us out in the field doing this. Now, Omi asks, is the hostage digging his own grave also free now? Where is he? Actually, he is. I've got some footage of him as he was released. That's him, the only one that doesn't have his face blurred. They put him in you can see how skinny he is. Oh my goodness. It looks like they put him in an IDF uniform, and he's been released. He's well, and will be going to the hospital to get, taken care of. And obviously it's going to be a long road for a guy like that. Hey, Joe Collins is on. I think that's my friend Joe Collins from Blacksburg, Virginia. What's next? Well, President Trump took off and went to this peace conference, and he is going to be heading up the conference, which is mostly Arab countries. And as he's doing so, they're going to be trying to go through the rest of the points of his 21-point peace plan. Now, if you go through and read the 21-point peace plan, we're on like point number 5 now. That was supposed to them handing over all of the deceased hostages to Israel. They only handed over 4 out of 28, so it's not they're not completing point 5 just yet, and that's a blatant violation of the peace plan. So now the Hostage and Families Forum had put out a statement that they're very upset about this, and I've got the statement where I thought I had the statement. I guess I lost it. But they just said this is a blatant violation, and it is completely unacceptable. You've got all these families who are expecting to get the bodies of their loved ones back. It's very, very important to them. And now only 4 of them have come home. So that's a real heartache for those people, for sure. Now, during the negotiations, as I said, Hamas claimed that it didn't know the exact locations of all the bodies of the dead hostages. In some cases, the militants guarding them were killed or the bodies were buried under rubble. So that's why I believe that we probably won't ever get all of them back. But we should have definitely got more than 4 of them back. And you know, when they get those bodies back, this just shows just how cynical and brutal Hamas is. In the past, when they've received deceased hostages back, the IDF has to send explosive experts in to very carefully examine the caskets before they can open them, because Hamas has booby-trapped the caskets of the dead hostages to try to kill more Israelis. I mean, I don't know how you get more cynical than that. That is just so unbelievable. And look, I don't care if you like Israel or not. I know there are a lot of people on the right who have been soured on Israel because of the jabs and all that. People that follow Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and people like that have been, they've just turned against Israel. And look, let me tell you, the Bible's very clear that those who bless Israel will be blessed and those who curse Israel will be cursed. So it doesn't matter if you're on the left or right. It doesn't matter if you're one of those useful idiots at Columbia University that's out there in a kafia that's, you know, advocating for globalizing the intifada, which means globalizing, killing lots and lots of people. And in all of the intifadas they've had so far, the majority of people who died were Palestinians. So the people who are calling to globalize the intifada, I guess, are calling for lots more Palestinians to die. But they don't understand that, so they're just useful idiots. So I don't care if they're on the left like that or if they're on the right and they're just mad because the left-wing government of Israel during the pandemic forced the jab on their people and were, you know, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of people that have been turned off because of that. I don't care if you're dumb enough to believe that Israelis just control the world, that Jews are in control of everything, and that the government of the United States bows to the Jewish, you know, oligarchs or some stupid thing like that. That is patently just ridiculous, just absolutely ridiculous. But I don't care what side you're on. If you are cursing Israel, you are cursing yourself. Get that through your head. I've got people that I care about, friends of mine, who are just so negative on Israel. And I have watched their lives just get worse and worse and worse and worse. I've watched their income go down. They've lost business. And look, if that's you, understand that God was serious when he said, those who bless Israel will be blessed and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And so we should be grateful for this peace process. We should be praying for the peace of Jerusalem always. And we should be sure to bless Israel at every opportunity because they are God's chosen people. And that's just all there is to it. As I said, Israel refused to release militants who participated in the October 7th attacks, but they did release the 2,000 or so terrorists that they promised to release. Now, going back to our live camera here, this is Hostage Square. There are obviously big celebrations happening there. We have video of when they made the announcement in Hostage Square that the place just went wild, as you can imagine. It just went crazy. So possible, because we're going off to our boat ride pretty soon, but all 20 living hostages have been released, and they are in care at the hospitals, being reunited with their families. And again, I just want to show you, I think it's, you know, the Bible says you should rejoice with those who are rejoicing and mourn with those who mourn. So if we want to rejoice with those who are rejoicing, this is Elkanah Bobot, one of the hostages, being reunited with his wife after 2 years. Again, I showed this before, but this is just so great. You got to rewind it. There she is. Can you imagine? I mean, I can't imagine being away from my wife for 2 years. She was obviously, as many of them were, very concerned that she would never see him again. And she's She's so excited. Man, I just love to see that. That kind of emotional reunion is just awesome to see. Just so cool. And the parade taking place, as they were coming out of Gaza with just people celebrating on the roadside. This is what we're seeing in Israel today. So today is a day to rejoice for Israel and be praying that the peace process will continue. But as I said, President Trump is going to do his best to get the rest of these points of his 21-point plan nailed down in this meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh. But the likelihood of it all coming to fruition is fairly low because it requires Hamas to voluntarily give up all their weapons. They keep saying they're not going to do that. And if they don't do that, then what happens is Israel goes back into Gaza and continues fighting. But now they won't have to worry about killing any more of their hostages. So make sure you hit the like button, folks, and again, go over to the chuckholton.com. So this is a good question. Lone Wolf says, how long do you think it will take for Palestinians to be educated to a peaceful, a generation? That's what it'll take. It'll take a generation. Unfortunately, what we are seeing in Gaza right now are little children being dressed up in Hamas uniforms. As I forecasted this would happen. We're seeing lots of Hamas fighters now coming out of their holes in uniform, acting like, yeah, we've been fighting the whole time. No, they've been hiding in holes the whole time. But they're dressing up little kids in Hamas uniforms, giving them AK-47s, and continuing to train them in jihad. This is very, very unfortunate, and it's the kind of thing that just makes you sick to your stomach to see. That is going to have to turn around before anything is going to really change. It just is very sad to see this happen. Now, let's see. I just saw another question here. Lord Peanut says they fed him a bit before they make him look better, and a few of them look like that. Yeah, actually, I believe that Hamas was force feeding these people, trying to get them to eat as much as possible to make them healthy. We're learning more about the conditions of their captivity, and some of them have not seen the sun for more than a year, probably close to 2 years. They were being held in a very, very, very deep tunnel, and they have not seen the sun in so long. So obviously that lack of vitamin D and lack of nutrition is going to be something that they may never recover from fully, but they're going to need a lot of not just physical and medical help, but they're going to need a lot of spiritual and emotional and psychological help, as well. As you can imagine, being forced to dig your own grave in a tunnel and being starved to death is going to be pretty hard on you. So let's see. Spirit Follower says, what was the final donation for the family of the little girl? Her name is Leah, and we raised about $30,000. We've still got a couple more donations coming in. We raised about $30,000 for her medical care, which will allow her family to get her the stem cell treatment she needs and to get more than a month ahead on her medication, actually about 2 months ahead on her medication, which will be a huge, huge help for her family. So thank you to all of you who gave. That's the great thing about the Hot Zone, is that we're not just here to report the news. We're here to maybe do something about it whenever possible. And when I meet people who are having the worst day of their life, which is something I commonly do as I go to war zones and disaster areas around the world, I can show you their plight, and it's not depressing for you because, like it is when you watch the news, because with the Hot Zone, you can actually do something about it. You can actually give directly to help the people that you meet that are in these terrible situations and change their lives forever. And that's what you did for little Leah in Panama. She's a South African girl with cystic fibrosis, and it's amazing what you did. I mean, you just went so far above and beyond that just blows me away. Blows me away. All right, so President Trump says this is the end of the war. Everyone needs Jesus says, do you think this is the end of the war? No, I do not. I don't think this is the end of the war. I think everybody wants it to be the end of the war, but we're going to have to see what happens with the Houthis. We're going to have to see what happens with Iran. We're going to have to see what happens with Syria and with Lebanon. Now, Hezbollah is trying to reconstitute. The Israelis just struck a whole bunch of earth-moving vehicles in Lebanon the other day, where Hezbollah was trying to redig some of their fortified positions, and they blew up, I think, like 100 pieces of equipment there. Hezbollah released a statement that's, I have it here. They were very upset because the president of Indonesia was set to come to Israel tomorrow. Now, there's some question as to whether or not he's actually going to come now. But his reason for coming to Israel, Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world, the largest Sunni group of Sunnis in the world. And he was going to come to Israel tomorrow to declare that Indonesia was going to join the Abraham Accords. That would be absolutely huge. And we're going to have to wait and see if it actually happens. Hezbollah was very upset about that. They said, quote, the president of the largest Sunni country in the world and the largest Muslim country in the world will visit Israel tomorrow. The Sunnis sold Palestine and fortified the existence of Israel in the form of cast iron. So obviously they're not happy to see everything falling apart. And, you know, this is how I think you can say Israel has won the war, even though I don't think the war is quite over, and there may still be some fighting to be done. Israel still may have to go in and forcibly disarm Hamas, but Israel has won this war. And I think about all those jokers like Scott Ritter, who have been just completely wrong the entire war, saying Israel was losing, they were crumbling, they were falling apart, they couldn't raise an army, that they were poorly trained and poorly equipped and poorly led, and that Hamas was going to win, Israel was going to fall as a country, and they just turned out to be wrong on all counts. Israel has completely changed the political dynamic in the Middle East for generations to come. They have brought an era of peace, I believe, that will last for years. It is now probably safer in Israel than it has been in the last 20 years. And not that Israel doesn't still have threats, not that there will never be another attack against Israel, because we know that's not true. But I think that what we're looking at, that Israel has accomplished here by absolutely taking the fight to all of their enemies, is an era of peace that will allow the children in Israel to grow up without having to run for the shelters. I think they're going to start get to the point where they don't have to have the shelters anymore. At least they're not going to have them ready and able to run to them at a moment's notice. It will be a very long time before Gaza can be a threat to Israel once again. It'll be a very long time before Hezbollah can be a threat, a major threat to Israel once again. And, you know, it's important to look back on the beginning of this war and remember just how close a thing it was. If Hezbollah had, even 1 or 2 days after October 7th, mustered their forces and broken through the wall in the north and invaded Israel from the north, it could have been a very different thing. The plan, as they understand it now, was Hamas and Hezbollah and everybody would have attacked Israel all at the same time, and Hezbollah would have come down from the north, Hamas would have come up from the south. They would have met in the middle, and they would have continued their reign of murder, mayhem, and terror across Israel for many, many days, weeks, or even months before Israel could have gotten a handle on that. And tens of thousands of Israelis likely would have died, and this would have been, it could have been enough to bring down the Israeli government. But instead, the Israelis rallied at the beginning when they had to muster forces and call up troops. They had asked for, I think, 160,000, and they got like over 300,000 people to show up that wanted to fight. You had, I saw it myself when I got to Israel. There were flights coming in from around the world bearing Israeli families who, you know, a lot of, like in Ukraine, when the war started, you had millions of Ukrainians that were fleeing Ukraine and going elsewhere. But in the case of this war, you had Israelis from all over the world flying to Israel to stand with their country, to join the military, and to fight for the survival of Israel. This is remarkable, and it's miraculous, and I think it's important to give God the glory for the miracles that we've seen over the past 2 years. There's just no two ways about it. I think you could very easily point to the very fact that that all 20 of the remaining living hostages were brought out, that Hamas actually agreed to give up all of their leverage. They have no more leverage now. And the fact that they did that is miraculous. I just think, you know, we have to give God the glory for that. But what I fear is that by making this deal in order to get their hostages back, and giving up like what almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, what we're going to see is that at some point in the future, there are going to be more Israeli hostages taken. And I've talked about this multiple times, that I believe that Israel is on high alert. Israel is much better prepared now to keep that from happening in the state of Israel. And so what we will likely see is that Israelis will be taken hostage elsewhere, whether they're on vacation in Greece or in Europe or in the United States. That we'll see hostage taking become a bigger thing, because what Israel has done, and in part sort of by necessity, in order to get their living hostages back, Israel has trained Hamas and every other extremist element in the world that taking hostages is profitable. So Israel has won this war. Israel has at least accomplished one of the two major objectives of this conflict, which is getting all their hostages back. We're not 100% to that point, but we're 99.9% to that point, because we still are waiting on the remaining deceased hostages to be released, if they will be released. But the second piece of that is that Hamas has to be disarmed and disbanded, and that we're nowhere close to that yet. So there may still be some fighting in the future, but it's still a win on the part of for Israel. Sheila asks, who decides how many Palestinians are released in these so-called exchanges? Well, they negotiate that with the negotiators. So that's just a negotiated thing. And it seems like the norm is about 100 Palestinian prisoners or terrorists released for every Israeli hostage. And that just shows that the Israelis put a much higher value on their own people than they do on the Palestinians. And why wouldn't they? Of course they would do that. But in Gaza today, this is being hailed as a win for Hamas, because Hamas is still around, they're still surviving, and they are dancing in the streets and saying, we struck a blow against the Zionist occupiers, blah, 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 all that sort of thing. And so they are, now, I mean, it is what it is. Okay, so I'm going to try different microphone, but I'm not sure that it's the microphone. I think it's the internet. It's the internet? Okay.
You have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, well, so are there questions? Are you putting questions on
Marina's doing questions.
the sheet? Okay. So we're going to go answer the rest of the questions here. If I can find my question sheet real quick. Here it is. Edward McKelvey says, could you see the Palestinians released as like a new version of the beepers? I understand what you mean by that. Like, could they have somehow sent them home with something that they could then push a button and delete them that way? I don't think that's likely to happen. The Palestinians are crazy but not stupid, and they are not going to accept any devices from the Israelis at all, and anything that they're sent home with, even their clothing, is likely going to be immediately taken off and discarded because they are very paranoid about that happening. Christopher says, any thoughts on what's going to be happening on U.S. college campuses? Do you know of anybody who's monitoring the situations there? I mean, there have not been any protests over the fact that Hamas is killing Palestinians in Gaza now. Hamas has been executing Palestinians that they accused of collaboration with Israel or disloyalty. So they've been killing a lot of them, and nobody's protesting about that. Question, will the aid be stopped? No, the aid is going to be ramped up. That's one of the points of this plan. So now that the hostages have been released, you're going to see a huge flood of aid going into Gaza. There's already plenty of food in Gaza. We've seen all of the celebration footage coming out of Gaza, and I haven't seen one person that looked like they were emaciated. They've seen a lot of people who were quite overweight and corpulent. So it's, the aid is going to be ramped up. And so it is what it is. KP1 says, during his speech, there was a commotion. Some people were thrown out. Do you know who they were? Yeah, there were two left-wing communist members of the Knesset who were holding signs that said, recognize a Palestinian state. Klamath River Media says, looking at the picture, is Russia and Iran collaborating with North Korea and China to destabilize the Western world order? Yes, they are. And yes, these conflicts are connected. Chris asks, what do you say to someone who claims Netanyahu is very corrupt? Well, he's a politician, and so saying that a politician is corrupt is kind of being redundant, I think. There may be some corruption there, and that needs to be adjudicated in an Israeli court, and they're certainly going to, now that the war is coming to a close, they're going to do a very strong reckoning of what went wrong and why Israel was caught unprepared for October 7th. They've been saying all along, we are going to assign blame, and there will be people who have to pay the price for this, but we're not going to do that until the war is over. There have been a few Israeli politicians and leaders who have stepped down for that reason, saying that it was my responsibility and I blew it. So like the head of the Shin Bet, the head of the IDF, both left. But whether or not Netanyahu is corrupt, that's up to the Israeli people to ascertain, and they get to vote on their leader if they want to. Denise says, what's the proof? That's the proof in the pudding. If they can't even talk to Benjamin Netanyahu, what type of peace partners are they really going to be? Absolutely. Lord Peanut says, did Trump end up meeting the hostage? He met the hostage families. I don't know if he got to see the hostages personally. If he did, I didn't see any video that came out of that. They're being very, they're really limiting the amount of video that comes out of the hostages themselves at this stage, till they can get them, because they're prioritizing their medical care and things like that. MA says, in the part of Gaza IDF controls, can they re-educate the people to a more civilized society? In the part of the Gaza that the IDF controls, there aren't any Gazans in there. They don't allow the Palestinians to come in there and stay there. They're very, very, very few. There are some that are working with the Israelis. And so, no, they're not going to be about, Israel is not going to be the one that re-educates these people, at least not in the short term. Patricia Banks says, how do we know that those missing hostages are not really alive and hidden somewhere? The Shin Bet and Mossad have very good intel about what's happening in Gaza, and they believe that those 28 were dead. Hamas confirmed that those 28 were dead, and so everybody believes that they were dead. There is a very, very, very slight chance that some of those that are dead might actually still be alive, but I think it's negligible. Everyone needs Jesus. Okay, I already got that one. Edward asks, do you think after the debriefing the Palestinians released will die? That's a good question. I don't think they'll die. I think they're going to be feted as heroes, and very likely they will go back to their terrorist ways, and they will end up dying in a firefight with the IDF or something like that. I mean, one can always hope. Is there a difference between, Jill asks, between country people of Israel and the government of Israel? So if the Israeli government was a tyrannical government, would you still support them? Yeah, that's a very good point, Jill. You don't have to support the government of Israel. You don't have to bless the government of Israel. And actually, I've been quite critical of the government of Israel in the past. There are hard left elements of the government of Israel. I was appalled by their response to the pandemic that took place in 2020. And I thought it was horrific what they did to their people. And a lot of their people feel that way as well. No, you don't have to. You can differentiate between the government of Israel and the people of Israel. But wishing that the Palestinian state subsumes Israel and all the Jews are murdered or kicked out is definitely not, supporting Israel or blessing Israel. Repeating these age-old lies that it's the evil Jews who run everything in the world is not blessing Israel. That's cursing yourself when you do that. So that's the difference. Reuben Gould says, what do they say if the bodies, what did they say when, if the rest of the bodies will return? They say that they're trying to get them together. And we probably will get more of the bodies out, but again, probably not all of them. I already got to the interruption of Trump's speech. Linda Foster says, is Hamas the only law in Gaza? Well, the IDF controls more than 50% of Gaza right now, so the IDF is the law in Gaza in half of it. In the parts that Hamas controls, yes. KP1 says, what should we expect here in the U.S. from the river to the sea people? I think you're going to see they're going to continue to be hostile to Israel. They're going to continue to protest, and they'll just go find something else to protest about, ICE or LGBTQ or something else. Omi says, which consequences are there for Hamas not keeping the deal? The consequences are that the IDF will go back in and continue fighting. Are you going to Israel soon? Maybe the first week of November. Is it possible that any of the deceased hostages are maybe still alive and being hidden? We already answered that. Will the press make a big deal about Trump being heckled in Parliament? Maybe. So if the bodies are not returned, then what? The agreement's off? Yes. Will IDF fight differently if they have to disarm Hamas? Yeah, they'll be able to be much more aggressive in their fighting. Joy says, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu will survive politically after this war? Well, he's got a very high approval rating right now, so we'll have to wait and see. Priscilla says, what's your take on Turkey and Egypt? Turkey has over 100,000 troops in Cyprus. That's a different question for a different day. Tim says, will the press make a big deal about Trump? Okay, I already answered that. Stanley Davis, are the jihadist organizations in the West Bank going to be a problem going forward? Yes, they are. There's going to be a lot more unrest in the West Bank. We're actually seeing Hamas flags being flown all across the West Bank. Everyone needs Jesus. Is Trump planning on taking over Gaza? Not exactly. His plan calls for the redevelopment of Gaza with a coalition. And so we'll have to see what that looks like because I don't think we're going to get that far into his 21-point plan. All right, folks, I've got to run because I've got more to do today. And so thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you. Please go to chuckholton.com and support us over there. That's the best place you can go. And we're going to keep following the story. We'll keep bringing you as much information as we can. And so thank you very much for watching. God bless you all. We'll see you next time.